Today, I will be talking to a 70-year-old woman, Colis Peters, and discussing her views on schools still having racial monuments up after she herself went through segregation. So, today, I want to talk to you about your experiences kind of growing up, and we're going to relate it back to a lot of the monuments, school monuments that still resemble racist notions. So, when were you born exactly, or roughly around the time?
I was born in 1950.
Okay, so we know during that time period, the civil rights movement civil rights movement hadn't started yet, but all that stuff was going on, Jim Crow laws and all of that. So how are you directly affected by that?
Hmm. Me and other black people were directly affected because there were certain things that we could not do. Uh, they had, like in public places, they had different bathrooms and stuff for the blacks and whites. They had different water fountains for the black and white. Uh, where I grew up, they had a theater in town, but the blacks sat in the balcony and the whites sat below.
And where did you grow up?
Madison, Georgia.
And for those who don't know, Madison, Georgia is one of the very few cities that Sherman did not burn on his march to the sea. So it is very historical there. Would you say that Madison is kind of like a racist town, or what is it, majority?
The majority of people, I think it's majority white. I think so. I've heard some people say that it is racist. You know, there's some old money in Madison, so uh, that's a possibility. But I think it's a from the time when I was growing up, it's a whole lot better.
So how was it? Take us back to when you was growing up, because there's plantations in those type of houses that resemble 18 whatever, going back hundreds of years. So how is that like for you, a black girl growing up and going past all of these houses and stuff that you know slaves were beaten and
Well, like the history, uh, like they're saying now about history, that some of the stuff they probably didn't even teach us back then. It's stuff I probably learned later on, you know. I knew it was the antebellum homes and stuff, you know, where predominantly, well, not even predominantly, but whites only live because blacks didn't have houses like that. So I guess Madison is probably about 200 years old or more. So
it's definitely old looking.
Yeah, old looking. It is old. Downtown, you know, and most of the houses, I think most of those antebellum houses is right there in the city. So, you know, I mean, they built stuff outside of the city. Now they try to preserve that area, but growing up back then, you know, it was different. The schools were segregated, so like I said, everything was different for black people. Most of the women, of course, at school we had the black teachers and stuff, but you know, if you want a teacher or something like that, most of the women were probably maids, you know, in private homes or maids at the hotel, you know, that they had there in Madison. Same thing for most of the black men, if they weren't teachers or maybe working in construction out of town or something somewhere, they were probably doing the odd stuff like lawns and stuff like that, you know, for people. So, but I guess there's one particular story back then that really got to me when I was younger, because my great grandmother was living until I got about 15. She was still living. So she was actually born during slavery.
Wow.
So her views, you know, on black and white was even different from mine back then. So, you know, Saturday morning I would get up and walk with her. Even in her 80s, she was still walking, you know, the mile downtown to go with her to the grocery store. And this one incident I remember where we were in the grocery store and she needed some produce. And back then, the only thing in grocery stores were teenage white boys and teenage white girls, you know, doing produce and at cash registers. You didn't find any black kids in there. But she needed some type of produce. I don't know, potatoes or something like that. But she was asking the little young guy, to help her out, and he asked her a question, and she said, "Yes, sir," to him. She 80 something, and he was only 16, 15 or 16, something like that. But that was one thing that made me so mad that day. I was like, why are you telling him, yes, sir? He's a young boy, but that's what she grew up with.
That's what she was, used to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's crazy for you to be able to still be around when someone from slavery was around. So I know her ideals of how life was working is way different than yours, and definitely probably way different than mine. So you went to school. Did you go to school your entire time segregated?
Yes, I did.
So how was like the school systems for y'all? How did that look? I'm pretty sure it wasn't new fancy books and the latest.
Oh, no, we didn't get new books. We got all the secondhand books from the white school. So, every year or every other year they would replace our books from the white school, what they had used to learn. So basically, some of the stuff that was in the books that we got was already 2, 3, 4 years old.
Oh wow! So you were learning things that were 2, 3 years previous that already happened.
Yep.
So they were somewhat ahead of you, basically, in grades. Augustus Baldwin Longstreet was Emory University's president in 1839. He also was a poet. Longstreet was known for being a racist. Because it's 2021 now, and we've seen a lot of things in the news that, have resembled a lot of the things from 1960s. The whole George Floyd thing, critical race theory. I don't know if you've seen that in the news, how they're trying to get rid of that. Like, what are your thoughts on them trying to remove basically a major part of history? You were a part of that history, honestly, in some parts. So what does that feel like?
Well, I think even if they pass legislation or whatever they're trying to do to keep the critical race theory out of the schools, I feel like you still can learn about it. I mean, if you can read, pick up a book, and find out what happened during that time. I mean, it hasn't been hidden all these years. Once Black people got information on what went on those years back then, they've been putting all the information out. They teach Black history. You can look up anything these days.
Yeah, I just watched a video. So
what are they really stopping?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they don't want it in school, but that's not stopping a person from learning.
That's true. If somebody wants to learn something, they're going to learn.
They're going to learn.
Like I said the other day, I just watched a video about the Rosewood Massacre. Never heard of it before, but I learned about it, and it was just from a simple YouTube video.
That's right.
So that's kind of how that went. But okay, so you feel like you can learn whatever you need to learn, which is very true. But what about these monuments that you see? Like Stone Mountain is a known racial monument. A lot of these schools as well have racial history in them. Like Emory, for example. Emory was built on Native American land. They were stripped away and sent on the Trail of Tears, like we know. And then hundreds of slaves actually built Emory University. And some of the buildings are named after known races. So how does that feel for you, just growing up with all of those Jim Crow laws, civil rights thing? You've seen all the people getting sprayed on TV, Martin Luther King. So is it like a slap in the face now?
To me, I guess I don't feel like it's a slap in the face, because you can take down all the statues in the United States that you want to. Is that changing the way a person feels?
That's a good question. No. People don't feel how they feel.
They're gonna feel how they feel. Just like like I just said, they can not teach critical race theory, but that's not gonna stop a person from learning if they want to learn. So taking the statues down, and I understand why they're taking them down, because Black people went through some horrible times back then. But that's not going to change the mindset of people who are racist. They're still going to be racist.
That is very true. I actually didn't think about it like that. Taking down these monuments just takes them down. It doesn't change anything.
Change the people.
It's kind of ironic, though, that they're willing to take down a lot of these monuments, but then they also want to get rid of critical race theory. It's kind of like, it is hypocritical, because you're taking them down to be more inclusive and trying to, make every minority or any group of people feel comfortable, but then you take away critical race theory.
Right.
So do you feel like that's just like all of this is just smoke and mirrors? It's just to make people happy at the moment?
Well, I don't know how I feel about that, but I guess I guess they don't want to. They're trying to keep people from really finding out how they treated us by not, going along with the critical race theory. But we already know. I mean, even if it wasn't in books, we've got grandparents that have told their stories. And people are not keeping it to themselves. They're telling their kids and grandkids what they went through during the time. So,
That's very true. Word of mouth. That's how a lot of these stories have been passed now that we've heard about and seen. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your stories on, you growing up as a young Black woman in America and what that looks like now.
You're welcome.
Although Peters understood how the image of some of these buildings looked, she didn't dwell on them. Her overall thoughts was that people can learn whatever they want to learn. So no matter who tries to take history out of history books, it'll never go away. We can learn, we can expand our mind through social media and stories passed down.